Flame Premium offers an intuitive timeline-based workflow combined with the power of the legendary Flame Creative Toolset. Exclusive to Flame Premium, the full Flame Batch and Action Creative Toolsets are unlocked within the timeline workflow of Smoke Advanced. Artists can choose their workflow based on project needs and without limiting their creative tools. If you're coming to Flame Premium from Smoke, you'll feel right at home, and you'll have all the Flame tools you've always wanted. So let's take a look at all the cool Flame tools you now have access to in the Flame Premium timeline workflow. Let's start with Action. In Action, let's go ahead and load up a 3D track. You can see that I've already done the track. I've placed a 3D model into the scene. And if we look in the side view, zoom out, you can see our newly created camera is moving in exactly the same way as the original camera the day of the shoot. So 3D tracking, obviously a very powerful feature. Another nice thing, if we exit back out, is we now have access directly to Batch as a module. So let's go into Batch. You can see we have all of the Batch tools that Flame has. So things like 3D Blur, Distort, Motif, Motion Analysis, Convert. We also have Substance Noise with a whole library of textures. We also have the gradients, 2D transform, blend and comp. Too many really to go over. Let's get rid of those. Let's take a look at Action, and specifically, let's take a look at the 3D particles. So I'm going to start by adding a 3D path. Just create a path on screen. Finish the path. Now let's add a light and a particle generator. So we've got particles coming out. Let's actually add another light so we can make the particles more visible. And we'll attach the light to the path. And we can start to move, of course, the light along the path. So on frame 1, we'll start with that as our offset position, and we'll move that around. So again, you can see very interactive here. Let's make some changes to the parameters. Let's go with a higher number, a longer lifetime, a slower speed. We'll have a number of steps there. That'll kind of have them coming out more continuously. And let's stop that. We can also go in and change things because they're actual true geometry. We can change things like the color. Let's give a little bit of color to the particles. We can zoom in a bit, maybe orbit the camera around, and play that back. We could render at that same speed, obviously. As you can see, we've got a full 3D particle system here at our fingertips in a very high-speed interactive environment. Again, let me turn the icon off and rotate around. So 3D particles. Let's get rid of that and take a look at another example, a more complex scene that we have here. This actually is just taking some still elements. We've got this hat and just a starfish here, and we're basically generating 3D particles based on those elements. So that's pretty cool. And I'm just going to run that through a processing pipeline and into this fully realized scene where I've got a keyed element. This is all at HD with a couple of keys actually with the woman inside the jar here. And if I orbit around, you can see that the jar has been turned into an extended bicubic, and we have our 3D particles inside of the jar. So again, lots of uses for 3D particles inside of the batch compositing environment. Another nice thing is that we have within Batch, since it's a separate module now in the timeline workflows, we have access to things like output nodes, export nodes, as well as the gateway import node, which is great. So that would allow us to have multiple outputs, multiple exports. We can really, go to town, sending mats out, do whatever we want to do that we would do as a standard batch workflow. It's now available in the timeline workflow, which is great. Let's exit back out to the desktop because we also have, of course, the batch effects workflow in the timeline itself. So batch, of course, is fully accessible as it was before, directly here in the timeline. So let me step inside this scene to show you another cool thing that you get in Flame Premium is that you have access to projection as well, texture projection. So here's a projector that I have set up, a little hummingbird here in our scene. Let's look at the source of that. It's just a still image that's been painted up a little bit just from a book. And if we look in our schematic view, I have a projector here. I'm going to move that projector in just so we can sort of see exactly what it's doing. It's actually wrapping around a 3D model. So we can import 3D models and apply texture projections directly onto those models. So you can see, I'll just rotate that around so you can see exactly what it's doing. It's wrapping around the surface of that 3D model. Let's just bring that back a little bit. And this little guy, if we orbit around, you can see he's all in 3D space. He actually is one of the elements that goes into this very large composite for the opening scene of this beautiful piece for the AICP Awards. So let's just kind of go back and refresh and zoom in a little bit. I'm going to turn the icons back on so you can just see how complex this scene is, and you can see how interactive it still is, because each of those icons represents a separate projection onto many hummingbirds that are flying around in this scene. There's also texture projection on the head here and the doors of the face. And again, if I start to orbit around, you can get the feeling of the parallax of the camera. Let's turn the icons back off, zoom back out. Let's actually reset our home position and really give you an idea of just how big this scene is. And again, very interactive here in Flame Premium. Zoom back in so you can get the idea of how we can create elements just from still frames and then project them onto 3D models and surfaces and create, very high-speed interactive 3D environment with 3D models. And with that, I'll just come back out to the desktop and I'll just sort of take you through a review of this very beautiful piece. So here we've got this scene flying in through the clouds, all of our projected hummingbirds, the projection on the head, the projection on the doors as they open, transitioning into other scenes with some other very interesting elements. And then our woman in the jar with the 3D particles. So that's a quick look at some of the really powerful tools that are now available in Flame Premium, the timeline workflow of Flame Premium. Thanks a lot.